What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the JERRY1 Podcast. This is now episode number 17 of the JERRY1 Podcast. We're still going strong. Today is Tuesday, January 26th, 2021. You're watching this on Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. And we got a big show on hand like we always do. But first, I'm your host, Nick Felice, two-time JERRY1 champion. I just want to remind you that you can listen to this podcast. Maybe you're listening to it right now on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, so Apple Podcasts / iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Breaker. And if you're wondering what Apple Podcasts, iTunes is, easiest way to get that. If you have an iPhone, it is the podcast app. So what do we have on store today? We're talking fantasy basketball and fantasy hockey. This is going to be more of a fantasy basketball podcast, but going on in fantasy basketball, we just concluded week 5. It's on to week 6 now. Only a 12-week regular season. Remember, Kyle Murphy, 5-0. He's the only undefeated team, and he has to thank his brother-in-law, Justin Kiefer, getting the upset win over Larry. Larry was 4-0, but an upset loss by Larry, not his best game he played in week 5. But, that happens in fantasy. It's hard to go undefeated. That's why no one's done it. Kyle, though, still undefeated. We'll talk about how he can do. Can he go undefeated? No one's ever done it. It's going to be tough to do. Matt versus Blake is a big week 6 game. You gotta touch on that. That's going to be a huge game. They're both 3-2. The loser falls back to 500. And with a bunch of teams in the mix now, Justin Kiefer looked at as maybe as a threat. A lot of these teams on their heels. So huge game in week 6. Week 6 is the closing point of the first half of the regular season, so a lot going on in basketball. Hockey, on the other hand, just getting started, but not a lot of time there either. It's only a 10-week regular season. Week 2 just concluded. Week 3 is underway. Nate bounces back. He beats me in a battle of 0-1s. Nate, still scoring really well. He's still the biggest threat in this league, and gets the 1-1, gets his first win of the season. Q also gets his first win of the season. Came back from 9 points down on Sunday to stun Jack. Jack was, he was thinking 2-0. Now plays Nate this week. I mean, it could be 1-2 for Jack. It could be a huge turnaround. Could be these next 8 days for Jack and his fantasy hockey team. And we'll also talk about what's wrong with me and what's wrong with Paul. We're 2 semifinals teams. We're 0-2. We're the only 2 teams without a win yet in fantasy hockey. We're going to get into that. We're going to all talk about it. But today's guest on the show is part of the Fantasy Basketball League, and it's his first time on the podcast, which would be the 12th different person of the 19 active owners that I want to get on the show. He'd be the 12th of 19th active owner. So who's on today? Today's guest is the one and only 5-0 Kyle Murphy. My cousin Kyle is on the show today. We're going to talk to Kyle. We're going to talk about his 5-0 start. We're going to talk to him a little bit about last year as well, about how him getting cut short. He was one of the teams to beat last year as well. And now he's really come out strong this year, off to a 5-0 start, first ever 5-0 start, just in his second year in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports. Kyle's on the show. Kyle Murphy's on the show. We're going to talk to Kyle in just a minute. But, that's today's show. Fantasy basketball, fantasy hockey. Let's get it going. JERRY1 Fantasy Sports Podcast, episode number 17, is getting going right now. Kyle's going to come on in a second, but let's talk a little bit about fantasy basketball before we bring Kyle on to the show. What's going on? It's week 6. This is the last week of the first half of the regular season, a shortened regular season, because we saw 19 weeks in the first year. Then we've seen 16 weeks in the second, third, and fourth years. The fourth year did not finish in the playoffs. And this year we got a 12-week fantasy football type regular season. So, off to a good start. I still to this day still think this is the tightest JERRY1 week, the tightest JERRY1 league we've ever had. Kyle won. He beat Kurt. Kyle 5-0, like I mentioned before. Kurt falls to 2-3. Kurt has had such a brutal schedule to start the season. He's had to face all 5 weeks someone with 0 losses in their loss column. And, these last 4 weeks he's looked at, he's probably looked at the top 4 teams, the Sams, the Kyles, the Larrys, the Matts. Kurt went 1-3 in those 4 games, which dropped his record to below 500 right now. And we're going to talk about it in just a second because one matchup we'll talk about Kurt's next matchup in week 6 here. Just a second, because Justin Kiefer, 2-3, pulled off a big upset over Larry. Like I said, Larry no longer undefeated. Justin Kiefer gets a big win to show that he's here to stay. Like you can say Larry, didn't have the best week. He just had an off week. But let's give some props to Justin Kiefer. He went out there and he played his best fantasy basketball probably of the year. And he went out and got a big win. He knew he needed to win. He didn't want to fall to 1-4. Would have been 4 straight loss. Justin Kiefer goes out there. People look at him as a fantasy hockey guy. We're going to talk about fantasy hockey in the show, but Justin Kiefer off to 2-0 start in fantasy hockey. Here he is picking up his second ever win here in fantasy basketball. He's trying to really figure out the basketball game. He's not in the playoff picture currently, but a huge win for Justin Kiefer and his boost of confidence, stay around. And he helped out his brother-in-law, Kyle, be on top of the standings all alone. But Kurt plays Justin Kiefer this week. And just when you thought Kurt was going to get an easy game, he has to now play Justin Kiefer, who's coming off a big win over Larry. That's going to be tough. Another huge game in week 5 was definitely Justin Hill finally beating Paul. Justin, it was a battle of 2-2s. Justin gets to 3-2. Paul falls to 2-3. It had been 1,057 days since Justin Hill last beat Paul in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports. And that happened in the 2017-2018 lone season of JERRY1 Fantasy College Basketball on Fantrax.com in the semifinals that year. That was the last time Justin beat him. That was nearly 3 years ago, which is incredible because these guys play in football every year. They play in basketball now every year since Paul rejoined. And they've been around since 2011, since JERRY1 started. So that was a huge monkey to get off Justin's back. And he finally beats a legend like Paul. Paul's right there, though. Justin's the 6th seed right now, last seed in. Paul is the last seed out, 7th seed right now. So a big win for Justin. We'll see what happens. And speaking of Justin, he did make the league's first trade this year with me. A trade that happened on last Tuesday, a week from today, as I'm filming this. January 19th, I made a trade with Justin. I needed a guard. Justin needed a center. I gave him DeAndre Ayton of the Phoenix Suns. He gave me Donovan Mitchell of the Utah Jazz. Both off the solid starts, in our last couple games with our teams, and then the first couple games with our new team. So we'll see how this goes. I'm 1-4 right now. I lost to Sam Shields in week 5. Sam finally got his revenge over me. I had the number against Sam in this league, and Sam, he's the only playoff game he's ever finished in this league. He lost to me in the semifinals 2 years ago. So big win for Sam. His scoring's down, but wins are there. 4-1. Sam, if he figures out his scoring, and which he did, he finished top 3 in scoring. Kyle was top in scoring. No surprise there. And then Matt had a good scoring as well. Sam, top 3 in scoring. Finally starting to figure it out here in fantasy basketball. So we'll see what happens there. Speaking of Matt, 3-2. You got top 3 in scoring. I was unlucky this week. I'll just say that real quick. I was unlucky. Top 6 in scoring. I did not win. That gives you an unlucky week, if you were wondering. But Matt, 3-2, beat Jack 1-4. Jack was coming off his first win over Josh. It was a little bit of life for this Jack team, but second last in scoring once again here in week 5. This Jack team, they're there, but I don't know. I don't know how much longer this team's going to be around. This team needs a lot of work. They need to make a trade. Speaking of trades, the trade deadline is less than 4 weeks away. It is on Monday. It is on, hold on one second. It is on Monday, February 22nd at noon Eastern Standard Time. So let's see if there's more trades. Kurt's been wanting to make trades. I've heard Justin Kiefer's got some offers, maybe for Bam Adebayo. Who's doing that? Yeah. So tough loss for Jack. Sets him back a little bit. This is unfinished business season for Jack. He's going to have to make a run. And then the last game in week 5, Blake gets the big win over Josh. These two big guys. Blake gets the 3-2. Josh falls to 0-5. It is the 5th straight year that we've had one 0-5 team. The problem for the other 4 that Josh has to go off of all did not make the playoffs, and they finished with a combined record of 4-63. Obviously, they all start with 0-5 records. But in those games after their 0-5 start, 4-43. So Josh not looking good. Last in scoring for the 2nd straight week. It's just not good. Let's get some scores out there. I think start here in week 6. I know I'm filming this on Tuesday at 1:30 in the afternoon. But after one day, obviously you look at Justin Kiefer, 212-29 lead over Kurt. Kurt just can't get any luck right now, and Justin Kiefer's playing well. I think people need to give Justin Kiefer a second look in this league. Obviously, huge game for me this week against Larry. I've had Larry's number, so we'll see. And of course, Kyle, Jack, battle the cousins. How can you not look at that? I like Kyle's chances to get to 6-0. Jack played well on Monday, though. I'll give him that. He didn't win. 146, 127 right now, airing this Tuesday afternoon. But Jack's giving him a game. And big game, though, is definitely Blake Crawford's got a 138-100 lead on Matt here on this Tuesday afternoon. Huge game. They're both 3-2. Loser falls to 3-3. You got Josh, who could play spoiler this week, could force Justin to 3-3. Then you're giving the teams like the Pauls, the Justin Kiefers, those guys. They're 2-3. The Kurt Irelands are 2-3. I keep forgetting Kurt Ireland's 2-3 because he's such a good team still. Probably the best 2-3 team out there. And so those 3 teams right there. The me and Jack's trying to hang around. But those teams like the Justin Kiefers, Pauls, the Kurt's, the 2-3s right outside the playoffs, trying to catch the Blakes, the Matts, the Justin it was that are 3-2. So they're all mixed in. We're just about the halfway mark. So it's gonna be huge games coming up here on their big week. Nothing too flashy with the matchups here in week 6, but every game is huge in Jerry 1's tightest league yet. So it's going to be fun. Week 6 is here. It's underway. And, but definitely one person I can't wait to talk to is Kyle Murphy, 5-0. I can't wait to get his thoughts on his team and how he's been doing. So here is that conversation with Kyle. And, should be a good one. So do not go anywhere. Here is that conversation with Kyle. Today's guest on the podcast, he is in his 2nd season in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports and his 2nd season in JERRY1 Fantasy Basketball. He had an awesome first year last year that got cut short because of the pandemic, but this year he's off to even a better start. He's 5-0 for the first time in his career. Kyle Murphy, my cousin Kyle. Kyle, how's it going?
Doing well, Nick. Thanks for having me.
And where are you coming from right now?
I am in my living room in Cleveland, Ohio.
Very nice. And your fantasy basketball team, 5-0. You're first in scoring for the regular season scoring championship right now. Once again, you won the championship last year for scoring. You drafted James Harden with the 7th overall pick this year. You got a couple wins over the Felice brothers already. You played Jack this week. And, what's your thoughts on your season so far?
No complaints. 5-0, right?
Yeah.
First in points. I mean, self-explanatory. And I didn't even think about kicking all my cousins' butts either. So
Yeah,
another positive.
you got a couple wins over me and Matt. Matt actually gave you a nice game. He actually gave you a run for his money, even though I think one day he forgot to set his lineup that week too. And but I don't think it would have mattered. But so you like this team? You drafted James Harden. And then let's talk. Let's go back to last year real quick. So you had the best team last year in the regular season. You were the 2 seed, but your top scoring team. You were trailing my college friend Larry in those semifinals with 4 days ago by 61 points. You had a great year. What were your thoughts on your season getting cut short?
Didn't like it. Thought I had the best team. I don't even really remember who was on my team. I just remember thinking I had the best one. So
I remember you got Zion as a pickup. That was
yeah, just off the scrap heap somehow.
Yeah. And is there any would you call this a unfinished business season this year?
Yeah, I think so. Coming out 5-0, I gotta show up since I thought I should have won last year.
So let's talk. Is this crazy to think? Because your team was so good last year. Do you think this team this year is even better?
Yeah, I mean, I just took a look. I kind of forgot who I had last year. Maybe a little more top heavy this year and not as deep this year's team. So I don't know. I can't decide. I'd rather be top heavy or have the depth across the board. But
Yeah. So
the
James,
records says my team's better this year, I guess.
yeah. So you had the 7th overall pick, which was right behind me. You drafted James Harden with the 7th overall pick. Were you surprised to get James at 7?
Yeah, definitely. Had to take him when he was there. I think there
And
was a consensus top 6, so I was looking past that. So at 7, if any of those 6 fell, I was going to take them.
And so he just recently got traded to Brooklyn. Do you think that is a good thing for your team or a bad thing for your team, James Harden going to Brooklyn?
Well, I think it's good in the sense that he wants to be there. He's going to be on the court. Seems to be more active, getting more rebounds, more assists, but we'll see. I don't know if he's going to score 30-something a night anymore either. So hopefully that goes down a little and the other things go up. I don't know.
And one thing that's good about him is he's one of those guys that plays every single day. So you don't have to really worry about him ever missing a game. And
yeah.
He's there to put up good points. But your top guy in your team this year has been Sabonis, even though he just recently got with a knee injury. Is that correct? He just had a knee injury?
Yep, I think he's fine, though.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
But he leads your team with 473 points. I mean, what are your thoughts on him so far? He's been pretty good.
That's my guy. Actually, I was thinking about taking him second, but I had a little homerism and took Drummond. And then he was still there in the third, which I thought was pretty nuts. So, I mean, I'm not going to say I expected it, but he was putting up similar numbers last year. So I think he's a little better than a third-round pick.
I will say one thing with me, every other round, me having the pick right after you. And I will say the one pick that really got me, and I still think about it, is that Drummond pick. I was that close to getting him, and it was in the 3rd round. That was the pick. I was like, oh, one of those picks. You're like, damn, I missed out on him. You took Drummond. I was so pissed, and he's been a monster for you, especially you're a Cavs fan. He's been awesome.
Yeah, he's a fantasy guy. I don't know about him in real life. It's the fantasy pod. I won't get into it, but wouldn't mind seeing him on the move.
Yeah, and so obviously this is the COVID year. We've added another IR this year because of it. Obviously your team's been so successful, but how has it been dealing with COVID this year?
Yeah, kind of. I do feel like I got a little lucky once in a while. I don't think I guess a lot of my team is Cavs, and I got multiple guys from the same team, so it's you can't really control having guys out. So if you get one game with multiple players that get postponed for the week and you don't want to drop them, and it's just kind of dumb luck, I guess. So I've probably been pretty lucky in that department. I haven't had too many games postponed.
One guy that did just come back for your team, he's done pretty well. KP, Kristaps Porzingis, is back on your squad. I mean, you thought about how good your team was, and then that guy was just sitting there on your IR waiting to come back. Now he's back. And what were your thoughts on KP?
Yeah, I think when I was drafting, I don't even remember like having him on my board, and then it was like the 5th round, and I like to stash a guy on IR who's going to go a little lower than they should because they're hurt to start the year. So kind of fell in my lap there too. It's for the long haul. I'd rather win the title than be undefeated, but I guess I'm going strong in both categories right now.
Yeah, right now. And but one strategy that has worked for you is and you're not the only owner that does this, but is like you always like there's the 7 max pickup. You're always like by the weekend, you're right there towards the max. You're always picking people up, always finding guys and 2 to pick up. And is you obviously the strategy's worked, but are you planning on sticking with the strategy of picking people up throughout the week?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to broadcast that it's so successful, but I mean, I think you're kind of nuts if you don't do it. I mean, you got to have that. You just got one spot at least to rotate guys in because the math checks out on that.
One guy I will say, and I told you this before, is my boy, not my boy anymore, but DeMarcus Cousins, who was absolutely shit in the bed all season long. He was hitting single digits. I had to finally drop him. You picked him up. I think it was after you picked him up. Or you might have picked him up the night he had that huge game just a couple days ago. And he had like 37 points, and his average only went up. He's only averaging 11 points, and right now he's your only guy playing tonight, I see. And Cousins, you looking to keep him for a little bit? What's the deal with him?
No, I think you might be seeing him back out on the waiver. So if you're a little bummed about it, don't pout too much. Might have your chance at him here pretty soon.
Yeah, I know. It's like and he's been so terrible this year, but he had that one good game just a couple days ago. So we will see on him.
I take him as an injury pickup right now. I think he's get Wood back, and he'll be back in the waivers for you.
Yeah, and you picking up people has really helped you to your regular season scoring championship last year. What would it mean 2 years in the league? What would it mean to you to win, to have the most points for the year for the second straight year in as many years? What would that mean to you?
It's cool. Fantasy basketball's fun, and I'm competitive, so it's nice to win and rack up the stats.
One thing that bums me out about you is we have this group message on Facebook. Maybe we'll have to find a different place. I know you don't have a Facebook right now, and there's a lot of shit talking in that group right now, and we need you to get in there. It's just nice that you're on right now. Get a visual. People see you. Like I think people call you because a lot of people don't know who you are, but a lot of people just call you as Phone Slaps because that's the name of your team.
I'm the silent assassin.
Yeah,
let my roster do the talking.
One familiar guy who did help you out last week was Justin Kiefer. My college friend Larry was the only other undefeated, and Justin upset him last week. Justin is only 2-3. It's his first year I think he's ever even played fantasy basketball. The reason he said he even wanted to play this year was to get into the Murphy conversations more, is what he said about playing fantasy basketball this year. He's in 9th place right now, 9th in scoring. That's where he belongs. What are your thoughts on Justin his first few weeks playing fantasy basketball?
Well, good for him. He's getting he's finding the right winter sport to follow.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who's he got on his team? I'm one of those guys, I don't look at anyone else's team. Look at my team and the waivers. So, all right. Luka.
Yeah.
That's going to help.
Yeah. What'd you think of that? What'd you think of him taking Luka at 1 when Greek Freak?
That when he went first overall?
Yeah. And Greek Freak went second.
Yeah, I think I would imagine Giannis has more points, but
I think I actually just checked today. I think Luka is actually up there.
is he? Let's see. Yeah, above him. So guess he made the right call, huh?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's why he's knocking off the second place teams.
Yeah, he's starting to get the hang of it a little bit, and it'd be really nice to you if you could sweep the Felice brothers, Jack, Justin Kiefer,
Coming after family and all the people in this league I don't know. It doesn't matter to me.
well, you're coming for it. I think winner gets good chunk of beer money right there. I think it's about $280 something. So that's good beer money.
Play for the pride, Nick. I play for the pride.
All right. But anybody who comes on my show for the first time plays my game. My game is called How Well Do You Know Your JERRY1 Fantasy Sports Teams? It's 5 questions from easier to harder. You only have 2 teams from the 2 basketball teams. 10 points, 20 points, 30 points, 40 points, 50 points. Most you can win is 150. Top score is 120. Are you ready to play, Kyle?
I don't know. I don't know how well I know my teams, but I'll give it a go.
All right, here we go. Well, it gets easier to harder. So for 10 points right here, how many playoffs have you made in fantasy basketball?
1, right?
And that is correct. Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. Is it a trick question? Did I clinch already?
No, don't overthink it. All right, at least for these first 2. Okay, for 20 points, you're at 10 points. How many regular season point championships do you have in fantasy basketball?
1.
And that is correct again. Yes, you're up to 30 points. Perfect score. Okay, now they're getting tough here. All right. For 30 points, double your score. What is your longest winning streak in fantasy basketball?
Didn't you just email that to me this week?
Did
Wait. I thought you might have.
Just
7?
Is that your final answer?
Well, now now I'm not sure. Oh, I want to say like 5 or 7. I thought you just said that to me this week. Sure, 7.
And that is correct. Yes, it is 7.
All right.
You are not at 7 yet. If you win this week, you're at 7. Your 7 came last year, week 8 through 14. You won 7 straight games, but you could tie it with a win this week. So that's right. You're up to 60 points. Next questions were 40. Here we go. Speaking of family members, so me,
Hold on,
Matt.
I got some help.
Oh, here we go. Speaking of family members, me, Matt, Justin Kiefer, and Jack. How many career wins do you have against us 4?
Oh boy. And I beat 2 of you this year, you already said. I have no idea what I did against you last year. I don't even know how many. Did I play any of you twice? Can you tell me that or no?
Here's what I'll do. You guess a number, and if you get it right, you get the points. If you don't, I'll say higher. I'll give you if it's higher or lower, and I'll give you half credit if you get the next one.
All right. I got 2 this year. Played you at least 3 matches last year. Probably played 1 or 2 of you twice. So that's like 4 or 5 games. Probably won 3 or 4 of them. I'll say 5. Final answer.
And that is correct. Wow. I might stump you a little bit because you have 2 wins against me, 2 wins against Matt, 1 against Jack, and you haven't played Justin yet. So it is only 5 right now as we speak. Yes, you have 4 out of 5. All right. You're at 100 points. You're going for the top score. Perfect score. 50 points. Final question. You're trying to become 6-0 this week. What was your record after 6 weeks, the first 6 weeks last season? What was your record?
4-2.
And that is correct. You got it. You got them all. Wow, you're the first person on this show to get every single one right. You know your teams, even though you sound like you don't. Maybe some guesses, but you got them
A couple of
right.
guesses, but it's the
Yeah,
email. Shout out to the commissioner keeping me
yeah.
informed.
150 points. Yeah, the top score. Congratulations. And last thing before I get you out of here.
Yeah, put that in the smack talk on the
All right.
Facebook for me.
I will.
150.
So undefeated. You're undefeated. In any of my fantasy leagues, no one has ever gone undefeated. That's never happened before. First of all, what would that mean? Is it just like a cherry, like extra, a cherry on top? What is it? What would be undefeated mean to you?
Pretty cool. I think I'd rather just win the title, first of all.
Win
I'll
your
take
first
some
chance.
regular season losses, but I don't see anything wrong with running the table.
I know. And is there a bit? What's the biggest threat to you winning the championship this year? Is it one team? Is it one thing?
I mean, I got to say COVID, right? I mean, getting the playoffs or something and one of your teams just gets a game canceled or two. I mean, hot water there. So I think this is good. Unpredictable, no matter how stacked your team is.
Well, your remaining schedule, I looked up. The current record right now, the remaining of your schedule is a combined record of 18 and 17. So about 500 teams you're playing for the remainder of the year. So, I've even said this. I've heard people say this. They look at you as the threat right now, like the biggest threat. And that people are, saying in a 2-week format in the playoffs, it's going to be very tough to beat you in 2 weeks, which is 14 days. And so
tell those people it's tough in 1 week.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I wish the best of luck for you, Kyle. A championship. You got it. It's a big unfinished business season, isn't it, for you?
Yep. Don't mean a thing without the ring, right?
Yeah.
73-9 or whatever.
Yeah, Jack this week. What's the mindset for Jack this week? He's struggling.
Well, I'm already slipping. I was at the Cavs game last night, so I didn't swap out a postponement game. So I don't know. Maybe I'm vulnerable this week. Not paying attention. Playing Jack.
Jack had a good team last year. This year, his team not looking too hot, but we will see.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know where Jack's focus is right now.
Yeah, the thing about Jack when he's at college, me and Matt always joke about it. It's like by the weekend comes, he's always going to forget to set his lineup. But
so yeah, if he gets out ahead of me, I gotta hope for the weekend.
Yeah,
there's something going on out there in Albany.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say, Kyle, about your team going forward here?
Not really. Hope my trio of Cavs keep it up.
Will there be a trade? Any trades? You got a good team right now.
Always open for trades. I like to review offered trades more than send out trades. I drafted my guys. I like them. So not a huge trade guy, but always willing to take a look.
Yeah. But, I appreciate you coming on, Kyle, to the podcast. I thank you for coming on, and I wish the best of luck for you down the road.
Of course, Nick. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Thanks, Kyle, for coming on. It was good to talk to you. Good to catch up with you. And I wish the best of luck for your team going forward. Might be the first undefeated team we've ever seen in Jerry1 Fantasy Sports history. So, I always root for history. That'd be cool to see. I think that would just be cool to see. But let's talk a little about fantasy hockey. Got to get in the show. Week 2 is in the books. Week 3 is underway. As we see Nate Severance with the bounce back win over me. It's kind of weird to see Nate go 0-1, definitely, but he gets a big win. Top 3 in scoring, second in scoring. Justin Kiefer, though, was first in scoring. He is now 2-0. He beats Paul 0-2. I'm 0-2. Me and Paul both had unlucky weeks. And while Josh Langley, the only guy that didn't score 100, he was last in scoring. But me and Nate played, and then Justin Kiefer and Paul played in week 2. We were the 4 semifinals. They had their season cut short last year, and different matchups. I was playing Paul, and Nate was playing Justin, but we had all our seasons cut short, and we were the top 4 scorers in week 2. So we still at the top of our game, but me and Paul come on with unlucky weeks, while Nate and Justin get the big wins. Justin gets 2-0. He's got a huge game this week against Matt. I think it's going to be the biggest Justin Kiefer Matt Felice game we've ever seen in Jerry1. Matt's never beaten Justin in Jerry1, so we'll see if Matt can finally get over the hump and finally take down Justin Kiefer, who's really made a name here over in the Fantasy Hockey League. Maybe he's a little upset we didn't get his categories in there. I know he was a big guy that wanted the categories, but it was turned down by the league to stick with points. You never know. It's kind of like a play with it year. Could have been a play with a year with the shortened season. We definitely got to do something with scoring. Got to change it up. Got to make goalies bigger. There's a lot of improvements with this league, but the league must go on, and Justin Kiefer's ready to, make this league his own. And but the biggest game I think in week 2 was Q, who was staring at 0-2, and Jack, who was staring at 2-0. Q comes back from 9 points down on Sunday to stun Jack with a 1-point victory. Jack falls to 1-1 while Q gets to 1-1. And this is a huge win for Q. He needed this. He's got a big game against Paul this week. He really put Paul in a huge hole. So a huge win for Q. You got to remember this was the 1 seed just a couple years ago. Regular season scoring champion in Q. He's got the tools to do it. We'll see if he keeps it going. And then Matt, how can we not talk about Matt? He's been off to a good start. He didn't finish top 4 in scoring. Got a lucky week. But him and Q got lucky weeks. We don't talk about lucky weeks. We talk about unlucky weeks. But because if you win, you win. And Matt got the big win over Josh. Really manhandled him. It was a battle of 1-0s. Josh falls to 1-1. Matt goes to 2-0. Matt trying to make the playoffs. He's the only owner in this league that hasn't made the playoffs yet. So, big game with him and Justin Kiefer, like I said. It's going to be huge. Jack playing Nate. We're talking about Jack, who's just almost 2-0. Now he plays Nate this week, and he could be 1-2. And then, of course, Q Paul, like I said, huge game. Could really put Paul in a hole. Josh could put me in a hole. Josh played terrible in week 2, but he beats me this week, and he's already off to a 9-0 start here on this Tuesday afternoon. Josh could put me in a hole. So me and Paul got to go to get a win. We're both 0-2. 0-3 would be costly. It's kind of weird because we were so good last year. We're playing the semifinals. Me and Paul off to slow starts. But don't count us out yet. It's a long season to go. 5 teams make it out of the 8, so a lot of spots. Over half the league makes the playoffs. Top 3 get a bye. A lot of season to play, but a little excitement. Q would have a nice comeback win on Sunday in week 2. Nate bounces back. Some exciting stuff so far. Matt and Justin Kiefer off the great start. So fantasy hockey, there you go. Week 3, here we go. 10-week regular season. This trade deadline is on Monday, March 1st at noon Eastern. So less than 5 weeks trade. Maybe we'll see a trade. But that's it for the show, really. No birthday shout-outs this week. I just want to remind you can listen to this podcast. Maybe you're listening to it right now on Apple Podcasts / iTunes, which is also the podcast app on your iPhone, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Breaker. And you could also watch us on YouTube, which you probably are right now. So, yep, trade deadlines, like I'll remind you. I'll keep reminding you throughout the next couple podcasts. February 22nd, fantasy basketball at noon Eastern. That's a Monday. Also on Monday, March 1st, is the fantasy hockey trade deadline at noon Eastern as well. But thank you, Kyle, for coming on. Great to talk to you. Great to catch up with you. Best of luck, everyone, in week 6 of fantasy basketball. And best of luck in week 3 of fantasy hockey. Yeah, that's been the show. That's episode 17 for you. It's in the books. I'm Nick Felice. Set your lineup, and we'll see you next time on the JERRY1 Podcast.